leaders in the room. I don't want them to sort of lose their mojo for what they had brought us today. So I'm going to request Oduor Ongwen, almost honorable, but executive director of ODM, to please come, and if you can do this in 7 minutes, we'll be very grateful. Karibisha Oduor Ongwen, please.
I don't know whether I should do them in 7 Masai minutes or 7 Wazungu minutes, because 7 minutes to talk about Baba is really a challenge. Viva Baba, viva! Viva Baba, viva! I'm not going to go into honorifics, and I want to disappoint you, because I'm not going to talk about what I was asked to talk about. It's like this story they say of a person who went, these blind people who went to see an elephant. So if you want me to just talk about party leadership and ODM party, I would be like that person who touched the tail of the elephant, and then say an elephant is like a string or a rope. So I decided to set my own exam, and I know I'll fail it. So I've titled my talk, Odinga's Legacy in Defending the Right to Freedom of Association and Political Party Building, because I didn't want to turn this into an ODM affair. So I know you'll excuse me. Secondly, I had intended to read this, but because of time, I'm not going to do the reading of the paper. This paper will be available. I want to talk about Raila Odinga in fighting for freedom of assembly and building the parties. And Raila was driven by this advice from somebody called Vladimir Lenin. And he said, you cannot have a revolution without a revolutionary party driven by the most advanced revolutionary theory. So you will see in Raila's entire life, it's been about building political organization, building political movement, and making sure that we change the country not by exhibition of personal heroism, but working within an organized community. So some people might have said, Raila hops from one party to the other and so on. It's because he believed you cannot change a nation outside an organization. The second thing I want to say about Raila, many people said Raila was born of privilege. By the way, Raila was never in this country when his father was vice president. Because his father was vice president for only 1 year and 3 months. And that time he was studying abroad in East Germany. So if you say this man was raised up in privilege, you are wrong. The other thing I want to talk about Raila is that he didn't start organizing political movement when he became mature to look for presidency or to look for MP position. At the age of between 20 and 25, when he was in East Germany, when KADU had been collapsed, like my friend Larry has said, and the country was creeping back to authoritarianism, now not by colonialists, but by the new leaders we had put in power. That is when patriotic Kenyans like Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Bildad Kagia, and others decided we must defend this space. And they formed the political party, KPU. Raila, out of his own initiative, that time he was in the leadership of All Africa Student Union, ASU, which about 20 years later, I was privileged also to serve when I was in the leadership of SONU. It's during that time that you became politically engaged. First, not in Kenya, but globally, because he linked up. Although he was in East Germany, he linked up with those who were struggling in the US, the civil rights movement, which are the likes of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Stokes Carmichael and others, Miriam Makeba, you can name them. It was also during that time that he decided that he is going to help organize the structures of KPU in Europe. If it was today, he would be called Gen Z. I don't know they were Gen what, but, because he was just around 20. He was not yet 25. So that is where you first trace the involvement of Raila Odinga in organizing political movement. And I want to tell you of something he was involved in at that time, which might sound like in Kenya today. KPU had come out with a manifesto called Azimio la Mwananchi. The English version was called Mwananchi Declaration. Then no printer would touch it here in Kenya. And you know, that time, very few Africans owned printing press. So they went to print the KPU manifesto in London. So Raila had to move from Berlin to London, where the manifesto was organized, was printed, and now how to bring it back to the country. So the way it was packaged, it was costing more than 50 kilograms. And you know the airlines, you can't go beyond 23 kg. So he was asked to pay for the excess. And being a student, he had no money. So what he did was to call somebody who knew Jaramogi, somebody in Germany. He had not talked to him before, but he just gave the airline his number to tell them, this man is going to receive the cargo and he will pay for it. So the airline called, and fortunately the fellow agreed that just bring those things, I'll pay. So that is how the copies of the manifesto left London to Berlin. From Berlin, Raila had to send these copies of the manifesto to Cairo, where there were people like Wera Olonde and Wera Ambido, the father to this girl who runs Infotrak. No, the uncle. Now from Cairo, they were sent to Entebbe. So it's now from Entebbe that they had to be brought, not by the normal channels, but you know where Entebbe is and where Kisumu is. That is how KPU manifesto arrived in the country. That was Raila engaging in building political movement and political party. Then in 1969, as you know, after what happened in Kisumu, KPU was proscribed. Jaramogi and the entire KPU leadership was after the entire KPU leadership was thrown into detention without trial. By that time, Raila had got an admission to go and do his PhD in the US. But because of what happened, he decided he's going to be with the mother and the siblings. So he forwent that opportunity to go and pursue his PhD. But it was also during that time, because now, although Kenya was still, by law, we were still a multi-party democracy, but you couldn't organize openly. So that is when the underground work began. There's a movement called December 12th movement. And one day when the story is properly written, my friend Jerry will tell you some of the things we did during those days. So Raila got engaged with other people, progressives, wakina Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Maina wa Kinyati, Oduor Witi. I don't want to name all of them. And that is when, because you couldn't call a political rally, you couldn't organize openly, the underground press started. And because I'm giving only 7 Wakamba minutes, I want to rush. First, they had to use the office of, they had to use the office of the late Otieno Mbala to print pamphlets at night and distribute them. But when now the relationship with Mbala deteriorated, because Mbala had a problem with his sister whom we buried last weekend, so he had to shift. So now the offices of the British Airways had to be used. Gyoager was the local manager of British Airways. So they would wait. After the flight has left and the office is closed, then would go into British Airways office. We produce the pamphlets and distribute in the country. That is how the underground movement was working. So around that, what was called Chama cha Ukombozi started, an informal underground organization. That is the forum we used when there was by-election in Karachuonyo in 1979 to campaign for Phoebe Asio. It is the forum that was used to campaign for the late Wangondu Karaoke in Nyeri town and others. Other words, even though political parties were not allowed, political work continued. Fast forward, then comes May 1982. Then Jaramogi was invited by his friends from Labour Party to do a lecture tour of UK. And he talked on the role of political parties in Africa. And he said, it is time Africa states embraced multipartyism, because you will stagnate if you continue with one-party dictatorship. And out of that statement, the Standard newspaper, then edited by George Githy, because they wanted to create problems for Jaramogi here, says, Jaramogi says he wants to form a new political party. So now the entire international press, BBC and others went and asked him, it has been reported in Kenya that you want to form a political party. So Jaramogi asked them, what is wrong with that? In fact, we should do exactly that. And that was a signal to some of the people who are in the DTM and CCU, Chama cha Ukombozi. By the time Jaramogi landed here, documents for registration of Kenya African Socialist Alliance were ready. And the process started in earnest, actually, to register a political party. Then on 9th of June that year, the then Attorney General, he was now Minister for Constitutional Affairs, Charles Njonjo, introduced a motion in Parliament to bring in a bill to introduce a clause that made made Kenya one-party state by law. By that time, we had already met with Raila, because when these guys was expelled, this Dave Anyona, they were with Makau Mutua and others. Those of us who are working in the underground with the DTM, the leadership said, you must take positions of leadership. And that is how I went into student leadership at that particular time. And so, within the campus, we were a core of 5 people who are helping organize CASA. In that circle were David Murathe, Paddy Onyango, Sia Onyango, and Adongo Gonyi. So when Njonjo introduced this bill, the 5 of us decided that on behalf of the student community, we are delivering a protest at State House. And you know, State House and University Halls, it's not that far. So I was tasked to go and photocopy the documents somewhere around the GPO. And we had told Raila of what we are going to do. So he told George Anyona that we meet at Serena so that we can tell you something. So Anyona got very excited and called the media at Hotel Intercontinental that I have a very big story for you people. He simply wanted to tell them that students want to take a memorandum to State House. So I was here trying to do photocopying, then I hear this commotion at Intercontinental. Anyona was arrested, whisked, and detained. Our meeting didn't take place. Then, of course, it didn't take long. 1st of August, the Kenya Air Force boys did what they did. And I think the rest is history. Because from then on, after they arrested Raila, charged with treason, withdrew the charge because there was no evidence, and detained him, then Kamiti, Shimolatewa, Naivasha, and Manyani became his home. Every time being taken in there, but he never left that path. The whole paper, I'll share it with CMD. You can read it. Thank you.
Somober. You're supposed to answer. Huh? Somober.
Somober.
Yeah. Reading is good. And I'm saying that because I was nodding as Oduor Ongwen was speaking, because about 3/4 of what he's saying is actually in his book, Stronger Than Faith. So if you find it, you find a less rushed version of all those events And Jerry Kabeberi, of course, is named as a co-conspirator. I don't know if you are safe because of a limitation of statute. I want now to walk into the difficult, no, the exciting territory. And so Frank Walukwe, please come and take over so that you can help us to take care of the more exciting political session. Thank you.
It's not that exciting. I think Kwamchetsi is trying to demarcate these roles. We've all heard the speakers. Weren't they enlightening? They were? Wapi makofi ya wale wameongea? Thank you very much for your experiences and for giving us something to ponder.